Welcome to Channel. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is traveling to Washington, D.C. today for high-stakes trade talks with President Donald Trump. Their second in-person meeting since Carney took office. The stakes couldn't be higher for Canada's economy. The United States has doubled down on tariffs across key sectors. Steel and aluminum now face 50% duties. Softwood lumber is hit with 10%, and furniture and cabinetry are burdened with 25% increases. These measures have already cost Canada 86,000 jobs and risk pushing its fragile economy toward recession. At the core of the dispute is what President Trump describes as a natural business conflict. Both nations competing for success in the same vital industries, particularly steel and automotive manufacturing. Both nations are vying for the same companies' investments and economic opportunities. While their relationship remains friendly, their close proximity makes the competition especially challenging. Ahead of today's meeting, the Prime Minister has already made notable concessions, rolling back counter-tariffs and shelving the proposed digital services tax, decisions that opposition leaders argue have weakened Canada's bargaining position. Negotiators are set to focus on three key sectors: steel, aluminum, and energy. Prime Minister Carney views these as areas where swift progress could deliver mutual benefits, potentially paving the way for broader trade agreements between the two countries. The aluminum issue is especially urgent, as roughly 75% of the aluminum used in U.S. manufacturing is imported from Canada. The tariffs have driven up costs for American producers who depend heavily on these Canadian materials. The economic uncertainty fueled by ongoing tariff threats reaches far beyond the direct costs of the duties themselves. Canadian businesses say the unpredictability is discouraging investment, as potential partners grow wary of Canada's long-term stability. Instead of dealing with complicated cross-border arrangements, many companies are opting to operate directly within the United States. He's calling for a tougher approach, insisting that if negotiations collapse, Canada must be ready to strike back instead of continuing to absorb economic blows. Ford draws a vivid comparison, likening the situation to a schoolyard where one student is repeatedly punched by a bully. It's time to fight back, he argues. Rather than keep backing down, he stresses that while both nations would suffer from an extended trade war, Canada cannot afford to appear weak at the negotiating table. Political analysts, however, are deeply skeptical that today's meeting will yield meaningful progress. Many expect little more than symbolic gestures, predicting that Canada will once again be forced to accept whatever terms the U.S. decides to offer. Critics worry that Carney has already surrendered too much leverage without gaining any tangible benefits in return, leaving him with few tools to strengthen Canada's position. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to boast about his administration's economic success, claiming that the U.S. has secured over $17 trillion in investment commitments in just 8 months, compared under $1 trillion during the previous administration. He projects that figure will soon rise to between $20 and $22 trillion, calling it an unprecedented achievement in world history and crediting it to his policies as the meeting approaches. Trump has dropped a few cryptic hints about what might come next. When asked what Canada could receive in return for its concessions, he replied, "You'll find out," adding optimistically, "The people of Canada will love us again." His remarks suggest that some form of tariff relief may be on the table, possibly on steel and aluminum, but he offered no concrete details. These talks unfold against the backdrop of the upcoming renegotiation of the CUSMA trade agreement, meaning whatever outcome emerges today will help define the tone of those broader discussions. With Canada's economy teetering on the edge of recession and burdened by large deficits from previous spending, the country has little room to absorb additional economic shocks. For Canadian workers across industries, from sawmills and auto plants to aluminum smelters, today's meeting is pivotal. Their livelihoods depend on Prime Minister Carney's ability to balance short-term relief with protection of Canada's long-term trade interests. At its core, the challenge remains the same. Two closely linked nations with deep economic and cultural ties are competing for the very same economic opportunities. How this tension is managed will